Hi, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Kerby Method podcast. This is your host, Dr. Alice Kerby, and I have a wonderful guest with me today. I am joined by Linda Mench. She is a clinical board certified nutrition specialist with a master's degree in nutrition. She has a company that she created called Symphony Nutrition that is designed to help people restore health and wellness by making better food and lifestyle choices. Linda loves what she does because she gets to witness daily how people's health improves dramatically once they change their diet. And she's thrilled with the opportunity to take her clients from overwhelmed to feeling empowered about better food choices. And she's really committed to helping people in the guesswork and have them leave with a sense of knowing that they are in good hands with a specialist. Thank you so much for joining me today, Linda.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, and one thing that wasn't in your bio is I know that you work a lot with menopause and with women and perimenopause and during menopause and postmenopause, and so I've been researching more about this topic myself because it's overwhelming how little information there is about it out there.
Indeed, there's not a lot of information because the M word has not been widely spoken until very recently.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this just do you think it's like a side effect of living in a patriarchal society? Like, why don't we talk about it?
I suppose it's a leftover from the patriarchal society, but I also think that we've been taught as women to keep a lot of private things very private. And we have been introduced into really more so a culture of shame about our bodies as opposed to this is a natural part of life and this is a natural part of our anatomy. And it's okay to say menopause. It's okay to talk about the vagina. It is okay to talk about our bodies in appropriate, physically appropriate or anatomically appropriate terms.
Yeah, very well said. I agree, and I'm glad that we're talking about it, and I'm happy for all the women that can listen and gain some knowledge and insight and maybe more comfort with their own bodies and being able to talk about them. And so, can you explain to us just a little bit about what it is to be a board certified nutritionist? Like, how does this differ from, a nutritional counselor or a dietitian? And just tell us a little bit about the scope of your work.
Sure. So there's a lot of words out there for nutrition. A lot of people are able to use the word nutritionist. A lot of people call themselves a dietitian, and a lot of these terms are regulated by different governing bodies and different state medical boards. The CNS, the Certified Nutrition Specialist, is a board certification that I had to take. I had to get a master's degree to be able to sit for that exam, and I also had to complete 1,000 hours of clinical work before I could receive that license or that specialty. Um, it depends on there's health coaching, there is registered dietitian, there are a lot of different people who can help you with your nutritional needs. A clinical nutrition specialist has the ability to work with you in a deeper biochemical relationship is how I think of it. My work goes deep into the cellular perspective. So I look at the body from what are your labs telling me? What's going on in your medical history? What is this particular prescription or supplement doing mechanistically in your body? And then we can figure out how does nourishment work with that, affect it in a negative or a positive way. How does our lifestyle affect our body in a negative or positive way, all the way down to that very specific cellular level. This is different from a traditional health coach is going to be able to give you tools to teach you how to execute a certain thing, but they shouldn't be talking to you about this depth of work. A dietitian is going to give more of a prescriptive plan of what to eat. So this is kind of the marriage of those two things plus that biochemical look.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about what happens at the cellular level and the biochemistry of the body. And what do you use the Dutch test, Linda? Like, how do you, I forget what you use. I know we spoke about this before when we met. What's your mechanism as far as when you work with a client? How do you like measure their, how do you find out more about their cellular biochemistry?
Well, it does start with, what did they bring to the table? So, what's going on for them? But if I'm looking at tests, I'm looking at labs, I'm reading just a basic chemistry. A blood chemistry can give us so much information about how your body is utilizing nutrients. Or underutilizing. Then another level of testing is the Dutch test, which is a dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. It's going to show us what our reproductive hormones are doing. It's going to show us what cortisol is doing in the body. It shows us what's going on with melatonin levels in the body. It shows us certain organic acid metabolites. These are all big scientific words that a lot of people might not understand. But when I work with folks, I explain to them, here's what we're looking for. This is why. And this is one of the tests we can use to help us understand more of what's really going on, as opposed to just kind of throwing darts at a wall instead of a target.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that's such a blessing for so many people. I have a friend who's she's my age, we're in our mid 40s, and her journey with perimenopause started kind of in her early 40s, 41. She started noticing symptoms, and it's been this, and I feel like it's this way for a lot of women. I mentioned I was just up teaching a retreat. It was all women, a lot of us in our mid 40s to mid 50s range. So we were talking about menopause and our how our body changes and how little information there is. But back to my original point with my friend, it's like she's been trying to find someone who can help take the guesswork out of what's happening to my body. So I think the work that you're doing there and being able to explain it to folks in a way that, takes out maybe some of the confusing terminology or language, it's so vital. Just to give people that sense of empowerment, like you mentioned in your bio.
I like um, I like to look at it as well, if you don't mind me using this analogy, a symphony.
Mm,
So a symphony is full of different groups of musicians, the violins, the woodwind section, the brass section, all of the strings, of course. And if one part of that section decides not to show up for rehearsal, that affects the entire orchestra, the entire performance. And so when we're looking at what's going on for somebody in perimenopause or even in menopause, they're coming to the symphony, they're coming to the orchestra, and yet part of them is not showing up in the way that they should, or maybe not everybody showed up. And that could be like, oh, estrogen is deciding to not show up as much anymore in perimenopause. And that means other things are going to happen, and we want to figure out how are we going to manage through this so that we can continue to have a rehearsal, we can continue to make music.
it's a wonderful analogy. And I love that that's the name of your company. Yeah, it's nice to hear you explain it. And I know this is a really broad based question, and I know there's no easy answer, but are there like dietary needs changes that you see more commonly, like as we age, as we approach perimenopause and into menopause for women? Like, are there any patterns that you see? And again, I know everyone's different, and so this maybe is a bad question, but I'm just curious if there are any patterns that you notice.
Well, first of all, as an educator, there's never a bad question.
Thanks.
So, um, there is definitely a change in our bodies as we age, as far as what we need from a macronutrient perspective. But we always need micronutrients, which are the vitamins and minerals. We also need the macronutrients. That those levels can shift and change. Part of it depends, like you said, on everybody is different. And so if I just said everyone that I meet needs to have X number of carbs and X number of proteins, that's not doing you any sort of service. As a
Mm.
clinician who works in personalized nutrition, who's creating an individualized plan, I, I can't live with myself at the end of the day if I tell everybody to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, but most people I find, most women need more protein as we get older. That seems to be the first thing that we kind of let go of. The other thing that I've noticed a lot is that most people in general are not eating enough fiber.
Mm.
So we're talking about things that grow above the ground, vegetables that grow above the ground. And we do have studies on that that show us most Americans, I believe the statistic is around 75% of Americans do not have enough magnesium in their diets. Where do we get magnesium? Oh, leafy greens. When was the last time you ate a salad? Maybe a couple of days ago. Can I try to do that a little bit better? Can I find another way to get some greens into my diet on a daily basis? Okay, I can try that.
Yeah.
Now I'm introducing more fiber, which is also introducing more micronutrient, which is also helping me feel a little fuller and helping me manage my health in a better way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you work with like plant-based eating as like better for the gut? I know some people do, and I forget. I met Linda at a conference, and so I she her talk was one of the ones that I really enjoyed and loved, and sought her out later to speak with her. But at this conference, there were also a lot of people speaking about the gut microbiome and the importance of plant-based eating to help facilitate like better biochemical responses in the gut. So I'm just curious what your take is on that. And I know again everybody's needs are different, but have you found like plant-based eating is better for the gut microbiome, or does it all just really depend?
Well, if you're trying to pigeonhole me into saying plant-based eating is number one, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. And
No, I know
I'm
you're
not,
not.
I'm honestly just really curious on your take on it because
Yeah.
there are some people that's this is the way. And then, but I don't think there's one way for everyone. Like as a clinician, I don't think that's the way the world or nutrition works. So since you're an
No,
expert, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I definitely believe that plants and plant-based plant having a good foundation, let's put it this way, having a good firm foundation in plants for every meal or for every day is certainly helpful for the gut microbiome. We know that diversity is what is going to affect the microbiome the most. So if I eat the same mac and cheese every day, for example, and goldfish crackers every day, like my children did when they were 3, and I do that for 30 years, I'm not going to have a very diverse environment in my gut microbiome. And diversity is what makes us stronger and healthier. And so if I was to introduce more plants, I'm going to have a better opportunity at more diversity. But I'm not going to say only plants
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like there is so much that we get nutritional value and health value out of animal-based proteins that many women I see really suffer with not enough protein. And this is one of the easiest ways to get that for them.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
the
I
only
agree.
way. It's not the only way.
I agree. I think it is easier as someone who's been dabbling in plant-based and I've been a pescatarian for a long time. It's like I like being able to just have fish for protein to get
Hmm.
enough, because it is
Yeah.
easy and there's a quality of at least that type of protein that's different, just feels different than plant-based protein. For me, I found that works well. And again, I know everyone's different.
Well, and if you don't mind me jumping in here and saying, the plant-based proteins that they're creating at the grocery store now, there's like I don't know if you remember way back when gluten was like a big deal, like we're not going to have, we're going to do gluten-free everything, and there were like 3 choices.
Yeah, I do remember.
And now there's like a million choices for gluten-free
Yeah,
eating.
it's much better.
Um, and even just a few years ago, the plant-based proteins were okay. It was, a couple of things, and now it's expanding to quite a bit more. And I've had a Beyond Burger. Or, sorry if I'm not supposed to say a
Oh, you
name
can.
of a
That's
company.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think they'll
um,
I don't think anyone will care. I don't.
well, but if I have a plant-based burger, I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty good. But I also want you to remember that sometimes a lot of these plant-based protein replacements are so full of preservatives and additives and just so processed, over processed.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to feed ourselves. And if that's what we're doing just to be plant-based, just to be vegan, I think we need to take another look at, let's see what we can do from a more whole food perspective, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what diet you eat, whole food is always going to be better than anything that is created in some, I don't know, some plant somewhere where they're just
Yeah.
mass producing, processed food.
Yeah, any kind of higher level of processing. I wonder about that
Yeah.
too, so I'm really glad that you spoke to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just love how knowledgeable you are. So I I want to ask you a million questions. Um, but
I
I
can come
do,
back.
yeah, I know. I'll have you back. And I definitely want to get just a little bit more into menopause and talking about menopause because like are there, I guess here's a simple question. What are some of the like the early, I was going to say warning signs. I don't think warning is the best word. Just the early signs of maybe menopause or perimenopause because it does seem like this is potentially happening to women a little bit earlier than we think that it should. I think in
Mhm.
early 30s or early 40s, mid 40s versus I think a lot of us, well, I'll speak for myself and some of my anecdotal like colleagues and friends, we think it's going to happen in our 50s. So there's just it can really catch one off guard. And so what are some of the like the early signs that oh hey, this I should maybe come and work with someone like Linda or come work with Linda to help me figure out what's going on with my hormones.
I love this question because I was one of those people that was caught off guard and I didn't know what was going on in my body when I was in my 40s. Um, I kept going to my doctor because I was super tired,
Mhm.
like just so tired, and I couldn't keep my brain together. I was forgetful, I was foggy, I couldn't put sentences together some days. I was talking about fatigue. I was so tired for a while that I would fall asleep waiting at the stoplight,
Mm.
taking my kids from one place to the other. And that was when it got very frightening for me. Like, this is not right.
Yeah.
I was starting to feel very anxious. I was very moody, but of course, I didn't think it was me. I thought everybody else around me was just being in a bad mood and irritable or irritating. And of course, it wouldn't be me. I've always been the nicest person. I'm great to get along with. And then I started having hot flashes. These things were happening, hot flashes, but like the room would all of a sudden just get warm. Like just all of a sudden, like whoop, you just like all of
Hmm.
a sudden somebody just turns up the heat and you're like, what just happened to me? Oh, it's probably not me. My husband, I used to we used to fuss over the thermostat. I go turn the air conditioning so that it'd be colder, and he'd be coming right behind me to turn it back up, and then he would sit in the house with jackets on in the middle of winter. I'm like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, it's cold in here. I'm like, it's fine. You need to go get your thyroid checked. There's something wrong with you. It couldn't be me.
Regulate to my body temperature, please.
Right? So the sleep, the mood changes, the fatigue, the hot flashes, those are very common signs that things are changing in your body. It'll be a little while, possibly, before your periods start to change. But I've had some women who would go 50, 60 days without a period and then all of a sudden have one every other week. There's no I mean, it's just different for everybody.
Hmm.
So those are some of the little things that happen early on, I believe, that need to be addressed. And often, I kept going back to my doctor. I was 45, 46, 47. I'd go back every couple of months, like something's not right. I'm like, oh, you're just stressed out. You're a military spouse. You've got teenagers. You're gonna be fine.
Hmm.
Okay, but
Yeah.
what's wrong
What's
with me?
happening? Yeah.
What's
I know what you
happening?
mean.
Like, okay, I must be crazy. Not
I
crazy.
feel like that comes up a lot around menopause is people just think they're crazy and like we're sort of told a little bit that oh menopause will make you crazy. But it
Right.
sounds scary to not know what's happening entering into this phase and things that you've used your entire life to manage your health, diet, and exercise in a certain way that just no longer work. Um,
Right.
like that's really frightening for people. It scares me thinking of like, I'm like, when is this coming for me? What do I do about it? Because I've noticed the past few years, it's just really difficult for me to lose weight. And I'm at a healthy weight and I'm active and everything, but things that I would do 5, 10 years ago where I would, drop weight, it's like it just doesn't happen anymore. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, yeah, weight gain is certainly part of this when we're getting into our mid to late 40s, it's certainly a part of the equation. And it's very
Mm-hmm.
frustrating because you look at this person in the mirror and you're like, this is still me,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I look at myself, I'm like, but what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? And I'm going to tell you, you've done nothing wrong. Your body is changing, and so we need to figure out how to adapt with it and how we can help ourselves feel really good because this new chapter of your life is an opportunity for you to find new fulfillment. It's an opportunity for you to fill your life with so many wonderful, beautiful things and not dwell on the negative aspects of change because change is inevitable
Yeah.
at any stage of life. So we might as well just enjoy it as best we can with some tools to help us get through the really icky parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like having the knowledge and the tools, it paints the whole picture a different color, a brighter color, where there is more
Yeah.
of a sense of there's hope and I can be empowered to learn about my body and my hormones and how to support myself. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to do it in a way that is, well, just, just muscle through it,
Mhm.
because I don't feel like that's a good solution.
No.
And I've had other people tell me that their providers said, "Oh, well, I just dealt with the stress and restricted my diet for 5 years." Like, how much fun is that?
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
Like, the holidays are coming, and I'm having pumpkin spice.
I just stopped and got donuts on my way back down from LA. Just my
Good for
favorite
you.
stop. It's like 45 minutes north. They make those cronuts, so it's got the croissant. And I'm not a big donut eater, but because it's far enough away when I'm coming from that direction, I'll stop. So I'm
Yeah.
on a bit of a sugar high. I'm like, I don't know what my insulin's doing now, but I'll just go for the ride.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. If you don't mind me
Mhm.
saying something else
No, you
here,
bring it
one of
up.
the biggest one of the biggest things that I've found with women going through perimenopause and into the menopause transition, and I have to say that there's a whole lot of fallout for those of us that are in our 50s and early 60s because we didn't have this education 10 years ago. Because remember, nobody was talking about menopause
Yeah.
until very recently. Um, we have this fallout around insulin and blood sugar stabilization, and that's one of the most important things that we can dial in through this transition is getting that blood sugar to stop being a roller coaster and start just being the monorail, that nice little ride that gets you from park to park, not the whoop-de-doos.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I
I
don't
love
like
it.
the whoop-de-doos. I'm not into that upside down stuff.
No, I don't either. And it's yeah, and again, I think it's scary when you don't know what's happening.
Yeah, yeah,
And if we talk about hormones just for a minute, I just started
sure.
listening to do you know Mindy Peltz? I know she's like a
Yes.
okay, so
Mhm.
I've just started listening to one of her books about menopause. And so she was talking just about the hierarchy of hormones, and I don't know if this is your approach at all, but how cortisone or cortisol is sort of like if that's not under control, then the rest of our sex hormones aren't going to be. It's going to be harder for those to regulate unless the cortisol is under control. Is that have you found that to be accurate? And I may be misspeaking, so I'm not trying to quote her book or anything. This is
Mhm.
yeah,
So what we have to remember that cortisol itself, from a biochemical perspective, and this is where you're going to get the education lesson from me for a moment, it's a
okay,
glucose-backed molecule. When you look at that from the chemical perspective. So
hmm
a cortisol is a glucose molecule, glucocorticoid. Anytime that we have a heightened state of cortisol in the body, which if we're chronically stressed, then we're constantly asking that adrenal gland to keep dipping in and creating more cortisol for us. We're always in that state of fight or flight.
hmm
And when the attention in the body is there, then the body is going to do everything it needs to regulate things that are important, like your brain and your heart.
hmm hmm
And your reproductive system is the last thing it has on its mind.
right, yeah, it's like that rest and
So,
digest phase is yeah, that's
right.
where when we're relaxed, that's when the blood could go to our sex organs and to our digestion.
Yeah. Yeah. So, from a hormonal perspective, yes, I think you do need to get cortisol under control. But how do you do that when we're constantly under stress and that organ is just always working that way?
That's when you come to one of
Oh,
my retreats and work with your nervous system.
I love it.
But go
I'm
on,
going to do
because I
that.
know that's not what you were going to say. But that is a
Well,
lot of the work I do. Yeah.
I mean, that is a really great reset point. And then how do we take that from the retreat and put that into our regular life? How do we keep from having that whiplash effect? Now I'm back to the real world,
Mm-hmm.
and how am I going to continue to navigate this? And we can't just live from one retreat to the next. It's like having a massage and then going back 2 years later. The massage therapist is like,
Yeah.
yeah, this doesn't really work that well for wellness therapy when you come
Right.
every 2 years. So we
Yeah.
have to do this on a daily basis. But we get that blood sugar under control,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to help stabilize the hormones.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I love how you explain that. And I like that you talked about it being a glucocorticoid. Yeah, I would really like to learn more about hormones, like just diving into this level of research. Yeah. I mean, other than going to get another master's degree or something, are there any good resources that you recommend for women who do want to learn more about their hormones?
I really like what the Dutch test folks are saying on their blogs and their YouTube videos.
Okay.
I would recommend going there because you're going to get a very scientific view, but you're going
Good.
to get accurate information from Precision Analytical. You're not going to find that level of education and reputable advice from, just Dr. Google, because who knows what's going to come up on that.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah,
But
thank you.
that's a good starting point. It's a
Okay.
good place to start.
It's a good recommendation. Um, any other lifestyle practices that you work with as far as like bringing things in along with the nutrition to help women through this transition, maybe to help manage some of the cortisol?
Oh, absolutely. If all we do is look at nutrition, then we're missing more than half of the picture here. So we want to bring in, of course, hydration alongside that. So what are we drinking? What are we using to help ourselves hydrate and fulfill our needs? And I'm not just a only drink water person. I'm talking about making sure we have good electrolytes. What are we choosing? Are we going to drink caffeine? What are our caffeine choices? Uh, how much is too much for you? What does your body tell you it needs? Okay, so my body tells me I need 15 frappuccinos a day. No, probably that's you making a choice about your body, and let's actually listen to your body and see what we would do, because then that hydration and those pieces, teas. I love to use. Sorry, I use herbal teas a lot in my practice. So I'm finding an apothecary where we can source actual real herbs that haven't been sitting in a box on a shelf
Yeah.
for a year, but very fresh. And then we use, from that, then let's see how we can use, um, how we manipulate sleep and restoration. And I put those in the same category because I feel like every day we need to have a few moments of restoration and we need to figure out where those are. So whether it's I slow down while I eat because that's restorative to my body, I can actually take a breath between a bite. I can actually enjoy my food, and I can take my 30-minute lunch and enjoy my lunch as opposed to, really fast and inhaling it and moving on to the next thing. Or, I mean, sometimes we have to, but if I can try to slow down, that's restorative. Um, Slowing down in the middle of the afternoon, like, can I take 5 minutes, at my desk and just sit back, turn everything off for a moment,
Yeah.
restore, sleep. So I look a lot at sleep, beyond the wear some blue light glasses and turn everything off before you go to bed.
Hmm.
Kind of, we go really deep into what do you need. I also feel like a mindfulness practice or meditation practice is very important.
I agree.
And in order to affect that cortisol system, in order to slow us down. So we do a lot of work in mindfulness here in my practice. Sometimes it's just, so let's put our feet on the ground for a little bit and let's just talk about how that feels. Well, that has nothing to do with what I just ate. I understand,
Mm. But it
because
does.
it might not be about what you ate. It might not be about the stress that's going on, around us. It's how do I recenter myself so I can move forward through the day.
Yeah.
And of course, exercise is really important. We live in a society now where, our sedentary lifestyle is, I don't know, it's nearly killing us,
Yeah.
right?
It's not great.
Um, so we need to get up and move, and we need to not put that last on the list. That needs to be a higher priority.
Yeah, agreed.
It
And
doesn't mean that you have to go out and like, do all of the wild and crazy classes that you did when you were 20. But
right.
you need to just get out and move.
Take a walk, do it,
Yeah.
put a song on and just dance around. Yeah, I think, and I love everything that you were just saying too. And to me, that really speaks in the language as far as the nervous system work I do about like creating an ability to self-regulate. Like, how can I learn to take these small moments of restoration and come back into my body and regulate my nervous system in such a way that then because I do think if we just eat and we're able to actually rest and relax, then our blood is going to go and help our digestive system work better. We're going to have a better, I think, probably quality of digestion and maybe a better bowel movement later for it, which is nice for everyone.
Hmm.
And I have a
Hmm.
colleague who calls these moments of restoration pockets of peace, and it's something I work with
Oh,
my
I love that.
clients on a lot. Me too. It's lovely. Like, where can you in your busy life, because so many of us, we can't go to retreats or we can't take an hour yoga class every day or whatever, but we can find those 5 minutes of
Mhm.
shutting down the screen or closing your eyes or just going out and looking at a tree and orienting and grounding. So I think it's just really important to emphasize that, and I'm glad you spoke to it. Those small moments of restoration can really add up to a more regulated system, decreased cortisol levels, a better quality of life.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. I think it affects everything, and to find that joy,
Hmm.
we just need to. I think that joyfulness gets lost in the shuffle
Yeah.
because so many things are going on in this chaotic time, not only externally in our environment, but just that internal chaos that's happening as your body is shifting and changing,
Yeah.
and it's shifting and changing the way it was intended to.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Like, this is part of nature.
Yeah.
Our bodies are part of nature, and just like the seasons change, so do we. And I like that perspective versus
It's
like,
really
what's
interesting.
happening to me? Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, in Asian cultures, the transition into menopause is considered it's revered in a wise way. Like this is the coming of age. This is the coming of wisdom. This is such a beautiful experience, and it's uplifted. And in Western cultures, it's more of a, oh, well, now you're no longer going to be skinny and you're no longer going to be,
Hmm.
all of these other things that are just not ever attainable anyway. They're not realistic. They're just kind of made for social media.
Yeah.
And it's not real. It's not real life, it's and so I'm disappointed in our culture for shaming us for having a body that changes.
Yeah. I mean, really well said, because there is a level of shame around it. And even, moving away from the topic of menopause, like after I'll work with women who have young children, and some of it's like, well, your body, I'm just waiting for my body to bounce back. And I'm like, well, your body isn't the same. It's why do we need for it to, why is there an expectation that you're going to bounce back and be the same as before you had a kid? Like, yes, your body will continue to change, but it's not going back. We're only moving forward. So I think there is a lot of pressure to just constantly be in this mold that we've decided is the best of maybe you're 28 to 32 and you have 4% body fat or something. And that's, once you move out of that, you're doing something wrong. And that's just so silly. It's biologically ridiculous.
Yeah, it absolutely makes no sense. And again, it goes against the whole concept of living a fulfilled life,
Yeah.
which in my research about somatic therapy is it is about finding fulfillment. It's about finding joy and being at peace with that. So that whatever size we are, we can find that peace and feel as though we are able to embrace something new in our lives and our body as a new adventure, a new journey. This is something new for me. This is not bad because I'm menopausal. Now like I'm some old, wrinkly old hag or something. That's
Hmm.
not it. Um, I have a client who is 73 years old, and we were speaking one day, and I invited her to join the Menopause Project. And she's like, "Why would you invite me?" And I said, "Oh, because you're a menopausal." And she's like, "But I'm not 50." I'm like, "It doesn't matter. You're welcome to be part of this group. I think you would benefit from this group." And she's having a glorious time.
That's awesome. Is that your new is this the project that you just recently started?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
just
tell us
launched.
about it. Yes, it's called the Menopause Project.
It's the Menopause Project, and it has been a brainchild of mine for a long time. And it just released it. We just started our very first class last week. And it takes women through a very short 6 week program where they learn a little bit more about their bodies. We start to get in touch with what's going on inside us. The women are, this particular group is a small group, 12 people. Uh, let's see, we're from 45 to 73 in this group. And we have so much wonderful wisdom in this group and so many different experiences, and yet so many things are the same. And so in this project, we are looking at, okay, what do we need to make in terms of changes with carbohydrates? How much should I eat? What's working in my body? What makes me feel good? How much protein do I need? How do I get from that roller coaster feeling every day to a nice steady monorail of glucose stabilization so then other things can be put into place? And we're working on discovering self-compassion in this group and trying out some different mindfulness techniques to help us restore. We are going to talk about detox. That one is coming up in a couple of weeks for them, and they're excited about that because not detox in the sense of we're going to go through this, massive cleanse kind of thing. It's
Mhm.
about how does your body manage the hormones how do we get rid of the hormones once they've been created and used? Well, they have to go through the liver. They have to detoxify. And actually, it's interesting that you brought up the Dutch test to begin with, because that's one of the big things we look at on that test. How are we actually getting rid of these used up estrogens in our body?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that when we talk about hot flashes and bone loss and bone density and how important that is as we're aging, and it's all of that impact on cardiovascular health. And then we wrap up with some restorative care and active physical activity, the joyful movement. And I have a special guest coming on at the end of this particular um, menopause project group who's uh, a pelvic floor therapist.
That's great.
So she's going to come in and talk to us.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Hugely
that's the
important.
menopause project. It's so
Sounds
exciting.
wonderful. Yeah, congratulations on bringing your, dream child into the world and birthing it, and it sounds like with great success.
And the program is live, and then they have pre-recorded modules that they can listen to for more in-depth information. So I do some live coaching
Great.
with them, and then they move on their own, and they get some handouts and recipes and just support along the way.
Yeah, I feel like having a sense of community as you're going through a big life change, any life change really, that a community where you don't feel like this is just me, there's something wrong with me, where there's a sense of, oh, there's other people are going through this too. I think that alone is so along with the education and all the wonderful resources you're providing, but it really creates, I think it opens the door to some of that like restoration that we were talking about, to being able to like settle and relax, to know, okay, I'm not crazy, I'm not alone.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
it's
for
hugely
sure.
important. Will you plan on doing this again? I know this one just launched, and by the time I think this episode will come out mid-October. So for some women who are listening and maybe thinking, "Wow, I'd like to do this next year," or do you have plans to do another launch?
Actually, I'm so excited to announce this to you because I have two exciting launches. The first one is I'm going to release a Menopause Project holiday special,
Ooh,
which is going to be a shortened term. It's 3 weeks of how are we going to manage ourselves through the holidays? How do we find these pockets of meaningfulness and mindfulness in the midst of all of the crazy holidays? And stay in community with each other because the hot flash is not going to stop just because it's Thanksgiving.
yeah, great.
And then in January we will launch the Menopause Project again for another 6 week round. And again, I do keep these groups only to 12 people, so um, that is an opportunity for those groups to maintain a sense of um, camaraderie and community that doesn't feel like, now I'm sharing with, 100 people all at once.
Mhm.
Like I really like the small group aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's just so much more intimate for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. There's something really nice about a number under 15, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great, Linda. I love that you're doing one just for the holidays too, and that you've got a plan to relaunch in January. I mean, how wonderful for, you know, people maybe just get through the holidays and then here's January and it's like I need more support with these changes my body's going through to have you there offering a program full of resources. You're obviously so well educated and knowledgeable about all of these facets of working with nutrition and the biochemistry of the body as it relates to menopause and beyond. But I mean, it's such needed work in the world.
Thank you. I really love this. I love this work. I love being able to put a voice to something that women have really struggled with for a long time, and to help them not feel alone, and to help them understand. I didn't know what was going on in my body, and nobody told me. And then all of a sudden, I'm menopausal now, and I was just shocked about what had happened to me. I feel like I just all of a sudden I woke up one day and I was like, oh, everything's different now, and yet it's still changing. And
Yeah. It's confusing if you don't, especially if you
yeah,
don't know what's going on or what to expect or that this is normal.
I mean, it's certainly not fun to figure it out on your own.
No, it's so hard. It's
Yeah,
hard.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
and this is, I know we're wrapping up here. This is maybe a question I should have snuck in earlier. It seems that and this is very anecdotal and basic research, but it seems like there's a link between COVID and then how it affects and I don't know if this is something you know about, but there's a higher percentage of women who got COVID in their early 40s being linked to perimenopausal symptoms because of COVID somehow affects the ovaries. Is that anything you've read
I
about? Yeah,
I
it's
cannot
very
speak to yeah, I
okay.
can't speak to that at all. I have not heard that. I
Okay.
do read a lot of research,
Okay.
but I can't make any connections there.
Okay. Yeah, again, this I haven't done a lot of research on it either. I was just curious if that was something in your body of research. So maybe that's worth looking into more. I'll leave it at that for
I
me.
will say, in my own clinical experience, when people come to me, and I do see a few men here and there
Mhm.
who have high cholesterol and maybe hypertension, but when women come to me, a lot of them, if they're not dealing with menopause symptoms directly, they're dealing with um, pre-diabetes, which can sometimes feel some of those symptoms can be very similar to
Yeah.
perimenopause and menopause symptoms, and also have dealt quite a bit with women GI issues. So I
Mhm.
was trying to think of all the different words that I wanted to say, but let's just say GI issues. So I've helped a lot of women through diverticulitis and recovering
Wow.
from things like that, and recovering from SIBO, and recovering from IBS, and or dealing with ulcerative colitis or IBD, Crohn's
Wow.
disease. So I do. It's interesting how many things, you probably know this as a medical professional yourself. Nobody comes to you with just one thing.
Yeah.
There's usually other things going on. And what brought you to the table was, well, I have these things I think is menopause. And then we start to uncover all of the layers. And there's
Mhm.
there's just so much more to the human body than just
Yeah.
this one thing going on. So
Yeah.
so we dig around and we figure it out.
That's great. It's wonderful. And I know you're based in Northern Virginia, but you also work online so people
Mhm.
can work with you from anywhere in the world. Is that correct?
Anywhere in the continental, well, in the United States.
Okay.
There are a few places where my license is not recognized, but I always find that out ahead of time, and then point people in the right direction.
That's
So
great. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Linda. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or offer any of the women listening, or anything else of yours that you'd like to pitch or promote?
Well, I invite you to keep following the Menopause Project. So you can find me on Instagram as Symphony Nutrition. You can find me on Facebook as Symphony Nutrition Consulting. So, or check out the website,
Great.
join the newsletter.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll have all
So
of Linda's links will be in the show notes so you can access everything really easily and just click and be taken to her sites and her social. Thank you again so much, Linda. It was really wonderful to speak with you today.
you're welcome. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be part of this new relaunch for you.
Thanks.